pitch that I love seeing in young engineers is passion, purpose, so that they understand their why, hunger to learn, and willingness to step outside of their comfort zone. You can pick that up in a pitch by not just by what someone shares about themselves, but their ability to ask questions.
Daniel Lambert, welcome to the Entrepreneurial Engineer podcast. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Darren. Great to be on the podcast and look forward to it.
Yeah, so CEO, chair, innovator, entrepreneur, and engineer. That's a really long title, and it's such an honor to be able to have this conversation. So tell me, what mission are you on at the moment? What gets you up in the morning? What's driving you at the moment?
Yeah, great question. In recent times, I've launched a water infrastructure development company called Legacy, and that is very exciting because it's very different to working for a big firm. Creating a company from scratch, as you know, is challenging and exciting all at once, and but really passionate about the journey that I'm on with my partners at the moment, and looking at new models for developing water for decarbonisation and really doing it in a way that unlocks First Nations partnerships in the water sector.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, we can get to a little bit, but tell me, and I really want to know, was there an idea? Was there a moment? Was there a thought bubble? Was there a segue that said, I'm going to go do this now? Was there that moment in time? Was there a whiteboard involved? I need to know. How did you just go, I'm just going to go do that?
I think there's always whiteboards involved if you like ideas. So I'm sure you've always got a pen in your hand, Darren. But I think that for us it was a bit of a journey where I spent a lot of my career working in consulting, working in water utilities, in exec roles, and a lot of that time was in regulated environments. And we identified the fact that in regional Australia, there's a lot of challenges. And those challenges particularly are around water, around closing the gap for First Nations communities, and in our instance, around the industrial space, and the fact that not only do we need to accelerate new models for decarbonisation, so green hydrogen, green steel, green iron is one of the new buzzwords which we can talk about, but there is a space where in a lot of these areas, water is not regulated. It's not necessarily seen as the core business for the water utility. And there's a space where you can create new models from scratch, which help solve major challenges. So I think it really met my innovation, sustainability, and entrepreneurial streak of trying to deliver new outcomes for big challenges society's facing.
So, look, yeah, you're right. Green iron, green steel. Unfortunately, I'm not hearing much green water.
Yeah.
We hear blue water.
Yes.
I think maybe we should start coining green water. Yeah, maybe that could be your new thing. You could be selling green water.
I think it's a good idea, Darren. Apart from the fact, unfortunately for water, sometimes green has a bad connotation as well. But it's funny. I was catching up with Autoskew recently, and I think that green hydrogen, we're hearing a lot in the media around the journey and industries moving away from hydrogen. And my observation is that we're not necessarily moving away from hydrogen. We're just refining how we understand the right applications for hydrogen. And so obviously there's green hydrogen for energy's sake, there's green steel for using hydrogen for manufacturing steel, and then green iron is one of the things I'm quite fascinated with at the moment, where you use hydrogen to remove impurities in iron ore, increase the value of it, and then and also help decarbonize the supply chain. So I think, like any renewable energy, water, well, most renewable energies, water plays a role, but also how do we look at renewables in a way where it's fit for purpose in terms of the application and the value for money that we create. So I think we're learning a lot, and there's engineers, uh, and as a fellow water engineer, you probably appreciate this, but we tend to really often have a passion for not just the technical, but the social and environmental impact that we create. And I think that the nexus between water, energy, agriculture is one where there's a real coming together of different thoughts and ideas to create new ways of doing things. So it's an amazing time to be an engineer with an entrepreneurial passion.
It damn straight, damn straight. I mean, you're singing from the mountaintops. Is exactly what I'm talking about. So you've said the word decarbonisation a lot, and in seeing what's happening in the industry, carbon management seems to be the new maybe the green buzzword. People talking about carbon. How much of just not just the end outcome, but how much is your project and what you're doing focusing on decarbonisation as a real core metric, not just at the end, but in the project life cycle?
Essentially, so the project that we're developing at the moment is over in the Pilbara in Western Australia. And in that region, there's a number of strategic industrial areas that have been created. And there's a number of major parties developing hydrogen projects, green steel, green iron. There's a number of lithium mines that are being developed. And so what we've found is that strategic industrial areas are being established and land made available. There's no enabling infrastructure. And the need for water and ability to provide water quickly is absolutely critical to unlocking at scale delivery of projects. So we're looking at water as a critical enabling element to the decarbonisation agenda. And I think sometimes water gets forgotten. Everyone thinks hydrogen or wind or solar or pumped hydro. And for a lot of these projects, it's the critical ingredient. And without it, and without a sustainable, affordable source of it, we're going to struggle to meet our targets. So I think that we're meeting a number of key priorities in that space around decarbonisation. But as I touched on before, also looking at a really unique, special way of doing it with the First Nations community.
Yeah, I mean that's what links it back to the earth, brings it back to the country. It's a super important piece of work you're doing. You talked a little bit, and we can dive into some detail. And obviously, I've had a look at your profile and your background. You talked about entrepreneurship and being an engineer, and now is the time. If you're doing that, and I feel like a lot of people recognize that there are so many skills within an engineer that are highly transferable into entrepreneurship. Tell me about your journey, how or when, or obviously a lot of the mindset and skills that you have, being able to zoom in, zoom out, look at things holistically, enabling infrastructure, understand the key ingredients, the flow charts, all the technical aspects. But then how have you then just navigated to this entrepreneurship real core of what you're doing? You mentioned some consultancy work, and obviously you've won awards and you've been on boards and you've done a lot of stuff, which I'd love to talk to you more about, and we will. When was that, and how did that was it the engineering mindset? Was it, I'm going to be an entrepreneur now? Did you just turn around and go, oh, I'm an entrepreneur now? Was it just like, oh wow, I just did that? Tell me about that journey that you went on, because it's really exciting, I think, for the listeners.
Yeah, great question. I think it's a bit of a journey of discovery, and I don't think I woke up when I finished high school or university and thought I'm going to be an entrepreneur. It's something that we learn by exploring throughout our careers. And early in my career, I discovered that one of the things I was really passionate about was the relationships with people, understanding a client's drivers, and asking lots of questions and learning. So I think sometimes some engineers, and it's very important to me, but some engineers are very passionate about the how and the what, and those skills around solving the deep technical problems and challenges. Um, I'm quite passionate about that as well, but I've often had a love to try and understand the broader context and the why, and sometimes, and naturally over time when you're working on projects, you you're asking the question why, you end up moving into the strategic space, and so you have to understand policy and governance and how assets funded, and who are the stakeholders, and there's so many what's the impact on the environment. There are so many aspects to being an engineer that are so exciting for us to explore. And I think both within our profession and sometimes for those looking from the outside into engineering think that we are uh, it's all about pipes and pumps or concrete and steel or buildings and bridges. And really there's so much more. Those are great parts of engineering, but there's so much more for us to explore. Uh, and I think that curious nature probably took me down a path of ending up in roles where I was very much engaging in lots of different arenas, asking those questions and exploring and being curious, and then learning limitations of certain models and wanting to test boundaries and explore how to create. And I think I could go on, but I think that having a curious mindset and not being afraid to step out of your comfort zone. I think early in my career, I was working, working at Arup in Melbourne, and they had no water business, and they had mainly at the time they were mainly buildings and transport infrastructure, and they're looking to grow a water business. And one of the managers from another state asked me whether I'd like to start a water business. And I thought, I don't know that much about, I know virtually nothing about water, but I was about 25 at the time. I thought, well, I'm interested in water and it's going to be a huge driver for society moving forward. And if this door is being opened, I can either say no and stick to what I'm doing, or I can step into the unknown and go on a journey of discovery. And that sort of, those sliding doors moments that we have in our career where we get the opportunity to really test ourselves and risk failing are the ones where we probably grow the most. It opens the door for us to have amazing experiences and have wonderful stories to tell when we're reflecting back on them in the years to come.
Yeah. I hear that. I mean, just those sliding door moments, those opportunities to say yes to. I'm a big believer in that. Because a lot of people are calling out, oh, you got to say no, protect your time, say no. And I think sometimes people miss the opportunities to say yes to those sliding door moments. I
Mm.
don't know too, and this is probably a segue, but I feel like those moments are still there, but maybe they're not as real, but maybe with remote work or other things happening in the market. I don't know, that's just maybe a sidebar reflection. But the one thing I really wanted to reflect on about what you said, and I think this is just getting to the core of maybe how far you've come, is you talked about the detail, right? The pipes, the pumps, the concrete, the steel. Yeah, you're in the detail. And then you understand how to design something. And then you understand how to build that something. And then you understand how to get that something approved. And then you understand how much that thing costs. And then you understand how to operate it, how to maintain it, and what that costs. And then what the NRV is on that, or the OPEX cost. And then over time, and then all of a sudden, maybe it is over time, but I think that would be that moment from engineer to entrepreneur, because you know how to price it, to build it, to design it, you know how many man hours it takes. And you've actually got that really holistic view about that one thing. And I'm really happy you said that, because I think that is probably the crux of that moment in time. Because you can't just say, oh, it was on a Monday when I woke up in Melbourne. um, but yeah, I can definitely see how that is actually a really good pontification.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it's a and and I think on top of all those aspects that you articulated really well, once you understand that whole context, then you have the understanding of the broader marketplace within which it's sitting, and the ability to ask questions, or why does it have to be this way, or
Yeah,
uh, how could we bring value, how could we disrupt the market. And
yeah,
I think they're the really fun conversations of yeah, stepping out of your comfort zone and really not being afraid to constructively challenge, as opposed to toe the party line, for want of a better word, or to follow the status quo.
yeah. To challenge the status quo. I mean,
Mm.
that is, if you're in that level and you know that that will have a flow on effect, or you can't do that because of X, Y, Z, or that chain reaction, that's when you really can unpack something that's going to flip the dial to disrupt. And that's the thing that, you know, I try to talk about that a lot. And it's trying to get that without the 25 years of experience.
Mm.
That's, that's the bit that is very hard to crack. So,
I think that's, yeah,
oh
it's
yeah, go
right.
on.
But then enabling something like you're trying to do with your business, and with some of the initiatives that you're leading, I think it's incumbent upon us, and at certain stages of our, well, throughout our career, but to try and open some of those sliding doors moments for those around us,
Yeah.
and seeing them start to fly as well. Because without some of those opportunities that I've had, I probably wouldn't be where I am, and I suspect it's a similar story for you.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Probably a time for my own podcast for that story. I might have a spare hour one day.
Yeah, I'll have to interview you.
Oh, please. I will very much happy with that. Let's put it in the calendar. I'm down.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Um, so tell me, you worked as an engineer in the army? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. I was I
Wow.
was I was in the Army Reserve and worked. I was an officer in the Royal Australian Engineers Corps, so did a lot of construction and also a lot of demolitions, which was quite fun. But it was probably a lot of that I did in my 20s. And from an army context, often you go in and you build a short-term water supply system, or you build a roads or infrastructure that's enabling infrastructure, but you're very much getting your hands dirty. And so I love that aspect of it. But we also spent a lot of time up in Aboriginal communities building long-term housing, water supply, roads, and building relationships with the local communities up there. And I love those. I think there's been a number of moments in my career where I've really realized that the engineering is not just about your head knowledge or solving problems, but it's about people and relationships, and and in those types of environments, and sometimes in First Nations communities or in international development, you're engaging with people who it can be the difference between life and death. And we really have such an amazing role to play, and skills that are so powerful when we bring them bring them into those contexts, and help solve critical challenges society's facing.
What was one of the coolest projects that you did in the army?
In the army. Uh, well, beyond the fun of blowing things up, it's just something fun about that. Yeah,
How do you reflect on that and think that those experiences is what has driven you to connect with country in your latest, business endeavors?
the experiences of working in Aboriginal communities, or
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah, in
think so.
regional Australia, like is
Yeah, it's definitely. I've worked a lot in regional Australia with the army, but also one of the projects I did with Arup a number of years ago was there was a period where the federal government was handing back ownership and responsibility for Aboriginal assets or infrastructure assets to the states. So we went and did a whole lot of audits of First Nations communities in Central Australia, in Tasmania, in remote Victoria, and one of the, and then but we benchmarked the Aboriginal community quality of their assets, so water, telcos, gas, power, roads, schools, with equivalent non-Aboriginal communities, and looked at what the cost, what the quality differential, and therefore the cost of capital to bring it up to a similar standard was. But it was through that I saw firsthand the gap, and I think that really gave me so that experience, plus being in places like Borroloola, which is in remote Northern Territory with the Aboriginal groups, and building houses and then playing footy with them in the evenings, and just, I don't know, as you say, just connecting, building relationship, made me realize we've got such a beautiful country, and there's so much wealth, and how do we create models where that wealth can be shared more equitably?
yeah, I mean, spending a lot of time in the developing world, and playing soccer at night, around the back of the treatment plant in sand,
Mm,
and we were using the sand pad to, make the concrete, and
yep.
um, you know, I think there is a lot that people maybe not take for granted, but yeah, there is such a disparity, and I don't think a lot of people realize, um, particularly in metropolitan life here in Australia. So yeah, it's the reason why I asked is because something similar happened to me, but that and those experiences just drove that connection that meant that there was a whole paradigm shift with your approach, and sometimes maybe how you press a particular outcome on something.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's good to hear that you had some similar experiences in that space, and it changes you when you see
Yeah,
that and you're part of it.
it does change you. Now, you have won too many awards. I'm sorry. There's too many awards. I don't know which one to ask you about, but I will. The most innovative engineer award. Tell me about that one, because innovation is something I'm very passionate about. But you still won too many awards, but I'd still like to know about that one. So can you tell me a little bit about that one, because it's very intriguing. And I
Yes.
want to know what it was about, what it was for, and if you can remember, that'd be amazing. I don't want your thank you speech.
Yeah, no, thank you speeches. It was actually a
I'm
number
only
of
giving
years
you
ago.
heaps.
I know. I went to a number of years ago. I moved from Singapore to Sydney, and to start up Arab's water business in Sydney, and then take over the Australasian water business. And I thought, how am I going to do this? Sydney is very much a city that's uh, largely a single utility town, and very embedded, ingrained, large established consultancies. And I thought, well, what can we as Arup bring that's different to a client? And so I suppose the genesis of that story was, reached out to Kevin Young, who was the managing director at the time, now Sydney Water, and went and had a coffee with him and a couple of his exec, and I asked him the question, what's your biggest challenge? And I expected him to say at the time, well, post desalination plants, operational efficiency, asset management, driving our costs down. But he basically said, look, we are challenged by the political cycle, 5-year political cycle, 4 or 5 year political cycle, 5-year capital plans, that thinking and investing in the long term and understanding what the future will look like uh, is something that he saw as an area where there was a need. And so uh, I went away, um, sourced a whole lot of research funding, and developed a whole scenario planning with a team. We developed a scenario planning process looking at the future of urban water, uh, and ran workshops with Sydney Water's staff from all over their organisation on different possible futures. And um, cut a long story short, it was basically we published a report called The Future of Urban Water. And it surprised us. So it got a whole lot of media in Australia, but all of a sudden we had utilities from all over the world contacting us saying, we have exactly the same problem. How do we think differently? How do we understand what cities will look like in 30 years' time? Will we be decentralized? Will we be centralized? Will we have closed loop house systems? Will we have, how will digital work? There's so many exciting questions, decarbonization. And so we started to continue to refine and evolve that approach, and worked in cities in New York and Rio and Manila and the UK and Europe and Africa. And I think that it was probably a process of, I think that innovative concept of, if I distill it all down, I think we're all being innovative when we go and actually ask the question why, try and understand our clients' drivers, and then go away and say, well, what can we do differently to help? As opposed to just responding to tenders, or which we need to do as part of a business, but how do we lift our eyes above the parapet and say, well, what's possible if I step back for a second and try and challenge it? And that journey at Sydney Water led to us doing a whole lot of innovative pieces, and then probably building a brand in the Sydney market where we were seen as different. And we ended up taking on a role as Sydney Water planning partner, and it formed a wonderful relationship. But I suppose you never know where your conversation with a client, showing interest, asking questions, and then being willing to invest some of your time and money and your intellectual capital into something will take you. And that was, I never imagined all the other things that would happen in the future, but I was excited to actually ask a question and then go and challenge the status quo.
Yeah, no, I love it. Congratulations. I mean, in knowing what that award, the background was, and obviously living, breathing, understanding the industry, and knowing what that works program has done for the certainty. And I think you're right, that 5+5, that 10-year horizon, that works program and scenarios, yeah, great. But to have certainty, that is the key with infrastructure, because we both know too many times something gets announced, then it gets axed. Something gets announced, then it's axed, and there's this cyclical, and that's the hardest thing as engineers, particularly ones in infrastructure. I think you could just see this is needed, but there's no funding, or it's not in the electorate, or whatever it is. And to be able to disconnect those two things, well done. I'm very much a big fan of that. And congratulations again.
Thanks, mate. It was amazing journey, and it's great to see the water. I think as a water sector, we're on an exciting journey at the moment, aren't we? With lots of areas to play in that are different.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not going to criticize it because I could, but I'm talking in general.
Yeah.
But that's more about, there's a lot of play there on development and infrastructure and building houses and capacity. I'm parking all that, but I'm definitely saying that sheer program, that idea is, and I believe that needs to be across all utilities and even councils, from contributions plans and onwards,
Mm.
that needs to be the runway. Otherwise, I still feel that, particularly New South Wales, we are lagging behind with what we need to deliver for the state and our housing needs. So that's just me going on a waffle there. But anyway, I won't whinge.
No, I think there's a similar challenge in many of our states at the moment, in the urban areas, around keeping up with infrastructure, that's for sure. And how do we be more strategic and proactive around it?
Yeah, I only just heard this the other day, because being in development a lot, I hear about strategic planning. I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, great, strategic planning makes sense. And now I'm hearing this term, strategic engineering.
Mm.
Are you hearing that?
No, I haven't heard it too much. What's your take on it and reflection on?
Well, look, my take is it's definitely required.
Mm.
Not just from leading infrastructure, enabling infrastructure, like you mentioned, how the development front works.
Mm.
Strategic planning, a lot of the time, we've seen it here in, with Aerotropolis, it's great. You put out this big strategic plan, but someone's like, well, we've got to get water from there to there. Or I've got
Mm.
to drain, sewer from here down to there. Oh, but, I need 35 pump stations. That ain't going to work.
Yep.
It's flat. It's not exactly, the grades aren't there. We're going to have 22-meter deep shafts to get it to work from one riser to the next. So that piece, I think, it needs to become, maybe we talk about entrepreneurial engineer. I think the strategic engineer, decarbonisation engineer. I think
Yeah.
these are the sort of terms I think are going to become more and more prevalent as the market moves, particularly with AI, robots, how data is collected and used.
Mm.
I think we need more people just zooming out. Sure, you need people designing in the micro, but that macro level, that's, I think, where the industry really needs to go. And these new, not just
Mm.
your civil engineer or your structural engineer, I think we're going to have these new terms for different types of engineers that will have different roles to play as the future progresses.
Yes, and I think it's fascinating watching the next generation of engineers come through and the mindsets many of them have around uh, constructively challenging things. So I think we're definitely, in my opinion, breeding a generation. Breeding sounds wrong. Developing a generation
Reading.
of engineers who are
Yeah.
um, wanting to think differently and wanting to bring to bear their digital knowledge and their thoughts around doing things more efficiently. And so that that mindset is something that is, it felt like it was rarer in the past, if that makes sense. So I think that
Yep.
we were,
Yep. Follow the standard.
like, yeah.
This is the code. Can't challenge it. Just did
Yep.
copy and paste. Like, maybe not copy and paste. I use that term loosely, but
Yeah.
what did we do on the last project? That worked. Let's just tweak that a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah, but I find you're right. Maybe the last 10 years or more, maybe, where
Mm.
I feel like there has been a little bit more innovation. And I don't know whether innovation is because of how technology has changed our lives. So now it's more, oh, well, the tech said it's okay, or, oh, well, look what they did in Sweden. Oh, that worked. Oh, why aren't
Mm.
we doing that? Everyone's looking around the room thinking, oh,
Yep.
reverse osmosis. Well, that wasn't around, 40 years ago. But, I actually had someone on, sorry to digress, but they said, oh, they did a doctorate on machine learning back in the 80s. I'm like, oh,
Well,
well, you had machine learning then? Yeah, well, yeah. Well, who would have thought?
that's right.
Do you come across, do you have young engineers working for you, or around you? And if you do, tell me, what's your interaction like with them, and what are you saying to them to maybe inspire them?
Yes, and I've had a lot, and through legacy at the moment less because we're a startup company, but still mentoring a number of engineers throughout different organizations. And I think for me, it's don't be afraid to step outside your comfort zone. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to try new things. I think it's don't yeah it it's really encouraging them to dream big and think big, that and I think it helps when you've been on the journey yourself to say, look, this is this is the journey I've been on, and this is why it's helped me grow as a person. And so I think they're looking. I think that we've got engineers coming through that are looking to be inspired by the profession. They're looking to be inspired by the opportunities, be that traveling, be that sort of navigating, working in different types of organizations, or solving different types of problems. And where how do we help cast vision for them for what's possible, and help show them that we believe in them is something that's really important. And it's a fun journey, as you know, because you then see the joy in their eye. If you're mentoring young people and you see them come to life, then you get to share in some of that experience, which is wonderful.
36% of listeners won't subscribe to this podcast, and that's a real shame. If you want to help me share the stories and help others learn and grow, then please like and subscribe. Now, you mentioned that you've got your startup business, and I very much appreciate that. But a little bit of role play. So I'm a young engineer. I want to come work for you. What would be a pitch that might get me over the line?
Yeah, great question. And I was thinking about whether it would be different if I was a developer versus a consultant or a utility. But
You. Yeah. Just you.
Just the pitch that works for the pitch that I love seeing in young engineers is passion, purpose, so that they understand their why, hunger to learn, and willingness to step outside of their comfort zone. So I think that and you can pick that up in a pitch by not just by what someone shares about themselves, but their ability to ask questions. And I think the skill of when you go into a room and as a young engineer and you're, let's say, I'll flip it on you. Let's say I'm the young engineer, but if I'm asking you, Darren, about what inspires you, and how did you start a company, and how did you what did it feel like to take the risks, and how did you navigate the moments when you weren't sure whether there was cash going to come in the door, or you had your house on the line, or whatever it was. Like I think it's I often get inspired by, because if a young engineer comes in and talks just about themselves the whole time, yes, I'm inspired by their passion, and I like to hear their story. But if they've got the ability to flip it on their head, and all of a sudden I'm passionately sharing my journey, and feeling like they're connecting with it, and we've got building a connection, then that's really powerful.
Yeah, it is. I think I lamented on it about, I think you've got to get someone to believe in you. I think if you can, and that connection maybe comes from that. Like if someone believes in you and they believe you, and they believe in you, I think, and I think asking questions, I mean, that's great. And that wasn't, we're not, this recording isn't going out there. So, you're going to get 300 applications tomorrow, and it'll be like, I want to ask you all these questions.
Isn't my email address going to be scrolling through, and my home phone number, and the through the bottom of the screen?
I'll put in the intro. This will be the tagline. I'll say, Daniel Lambert will say, if you want to get a job, Just go to 33 minutes in, 44 minutes, whatever it
There
is.
we go.
Yeah, just look for that. So,
But do you know what, on as a sidebar though,
oh yeah,
like,
please.
I think with social media and things like that, I think sometimes as engineers that are or entrepreneurs that have been in the workforce for a while, you get lots of messages, and um, I most of the time I love it when if someone does a good job of it and sends me a message randomly on LinkedIn. Yeah. I sit there and go, what have I got to lose to have a conversation?
Yeah,
I might I might not have a job for the person, but I might be able to point them in the right direction or connect them. But I suppose my point is think about how you do it, but don't be afraid to look at different avenues and angles to reach out, because uh, as a young professional coming through, you want to be mentored and guided, but also I think as more senior engineers and entrepreneurs, we should be open to you grow from having conversations with people, and it's a journey of discovery. So I've sometimes I've skeptically said yes to things, and doors have opened for me when I've and
yeah.
and I look back and I go, yeah, don't close yourself off to the world, because it's a fascinating place and full of fascinating people.
Yeah, just in talking about that, because, creating a personal connection with a LinkedIn DM is a surefire way to get a response. Secondly, I find most senior engineers are very generous with their time.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is, but I've found that even in my own. Like, I still reach out to people, obviously yourself and others, and people think, oh, well, you've got a great network. I'm like, no, I'm still pushing, trying, talking to people, trying to reach and make those new connections, not just for me. So it never stops.
Yes.
And the other thing is that I find that a, a lot of younger engineers, I don't know, the confidence isn't there. They don't feel like they can make that approach. And I don't think they understand the power of LinkedIn. You know, we've got a similar working history where you're a young engineer, you've got your manager, maybe a senior, and if you're lucky, maybe someone from the contractor or the designer or maybe from council or whoever it is from the authority, and that's your range. Like, you might have 8 options max at any one time, someone that you can reach out to for coffee, work, lifestyle, mentoring, whatever it is. And now you open up LinkedIn and you've got hundreds of thousands of people.
Mm.
And just to even break that down and reflect on it, you just think, well, but they go, oh, but I don't know who to go to. I don't, and I wonder, like, what's better, having 100,000 options or 8 real people in front of you? It's an interesting thought.
Sure is. And it's pretty amazing, is that you can if you reach out and you're having a conversation with someone from the other side of the world with totally different experiences, which is
Oh yeah,
enlarging your whole perspective.
yeah, yeah. And there's lots of gurus out there. There's lots of people where, at least for us, you go, well, I've got a lot of my technical know-how. I've got my engineering. Oh, hold on, I want to build a water utility. Well, I want to reach out to those people that have been there, done that. I think it's just a moment in time.
Sure is.
So I can see all your logos. Love the logos. We talked about that before. So you're an adjunct professor. Tell us
Yes.
about that, because that sounds really cool, and I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, adjunct professor at UNSW, and really traversing the School of Civil and Chemical Engineering, as well as the humanitarian engineering faculty. And like some other unis around Australia now, the engineering faculty engineering school has set up humanitarian engineering as a minor, which is amazing. I think of how I would have loved that when I was going through.
Yeah.
But yeah, involved in lecturing there, involved in helping sort of act as a panelist on some of their some of their group assignments, and then just staying connected and helping open up doors and opportunities around that connection between research and application. So yeah, it's been a good experience, because I think I love that concept of applied research, and how do we join the dots, because there's a lot of incredible people in the universities, and that have a desire to connect more closely with practical outcomes, and a lot of people in the workforce that are very busy and don't always have the time to step back and think differently, or really bring some of that research lens to what they're doing.
Mm. Yeah, I love that, and those different, again, humanitarian engineering. That's another one that you go, wow, that's just another subset, another branch, maybe another college of
Yeah.
engineering. I mean, you're still affiliated with Engineers Australia. How does that fit into what your thoughts are? At least maybe a projection.
Oh, that's a great question, actually. And in the last few years, they've set up within Engineers Australia, humanitarian engineering community of practice, uh, and it's probably still in the early days. But I think over time, how do we help? How do we help sort of elevate that role that plays? Because I think there's the traditional concept of humanitarian engineering, where you're thinking about international development, but
Yeah.
really the principles traverse everything we do. And I think the social value we create, and that connection with people and places is really powerful. So I think we're still trying to explore how does a bit like sustainability, right? If you think about that, a number of years ago, it popped up and it was a separate part of every business where
Yeah.
they were the sustainability people. And over time, as it gets more mature, it gets integrated into everything we do. I think that social aspect of engineering is something is rapidly evolving. And if we step back to the First Nations conversation, I think the engineering profession is becoming more and more aware of how do we uh, consider cultural values and history and heritage and understanding of water and land when we're developing projects, rather than just designing and planning and delivering from a Western lens. And it's so we've still got a long way to go, but I think we're on a really powerful trajectory of thinking more holistically.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think holistic engineer though. That's not gonna fly.
No, it's a bit like green water. It's
I know. Green water. I mean, who wouldn't want that? Well, look, maybe if you're a mining or industrial client, you'll be like, is it cheap? Sure.
exactly fit
Get
for
it in.
purpose.
Get it in. Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm actually gonna go. I gotta trademark that, because I know you're gonna be after this. You're gonna be like, oh, green water's mine.
And you'll be typing in holistic engineering. Anyway,
No, that's right. I'll take holistic. You can have green water. It's fair. So tell me, throughout the years, has there been, or maybe there still is there has there been a mentor that's helped you along the way, and how important has that been for you?
Yes, there definitely has been. I mean, there's been a number of different mentors and different stages and seasons of my career. So, and I think, I mean, one thing I'd encourage people to on the journey is a lot of big companies will have mentoring programs and
Yeah.
encourage you to get involved in them. But often, uh, you'll get mentored by someone within your organization, or if you're part of the Australian Water Association, you might get mentored by someone within that organization itself. And that's fantastic, but also to proactively go out and seek people out. We talked about LinkedIn. We talked about, you might see someone who speaks at a conference and go, wow, they're talking a
Beeline.
language that, but make a beeline for them, but they're talking a language that I'm really inspired by, but I don't fully understand, or I don't know how to get into that space. And so be proactive about finding people that you're inspired by. But I think uh, for me, early in my career, I had um, a water professional, Paul Crackman, who worked at Arup, and he really helped open doors for me to start a water business in Victoria when I didn't have really much background at all in that space. Helped open the door for me to move to Singapore and start up a Southeast Asia water business, and then step into an Australasia role. So I think there's the mentors, and then there's the champions
Yeah.
piece. And so mentor people who do both is really powerful, because you need people who mentoring is often about providing support and advice and a sounding board. But championing or advocating is really important as well, because it carries power when you've got someone else singing, sort of helping to open doors for you, because it's not always easy when you're right at the start of your career. It's not to say we shouldn't try and bang them down ourselves, but it helps when we've got people in our corner.
Yeah. Yeah. To have that mentor and champion combo, that's dangerous. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that is because it's sort of back to that believe in you, but that mentor who believes in you and really pushes you. Yeah, that's great. And tell me, like, do you think you'd be where you are without that person or those couple of people?
Probably not. Probably not. I think that it's hard to know where you would be and what you would be doing fully, but I still think I would have probably taken risks and been adventurous, and probably had some really fabulous experiences in engineering, and I probably would have still gone down an entrepreneurial pathway. But I think there's something that builds. Yeah, when people believe in you, you learn to believe in yourself, or you believe in yourself to a greater level, and so definitely it can accelerate your journey, and definitely something I'm very grateful for.
Um, So tell me, what's next for you? What's next for Daniel Lambert? What's the next 5 year, 10 year? What's the next horizon? The challenge?
Mm,
What's in front of you now? Where are you going? And can you see it in the distance there? And what does it look like?
yes. I, there's always, it's a funny question, because I've always being someone who likes to say yes, like yourself. I've often got a few irons in the fire, but I mean, legacy, in terms of legacy, that is to develop this project. It's a $5 billion project that, to get to first water, is likely to be early 2030, and that's moving quickly in terms of approvals, government funding, investors, First Nations partnerships, design, construction, commissioning, and so I see that playing being an exciting adventure over the next 6 years, where we'll have unlocked a region, but potentially unlocked a new model for developing common use water infrastructure in industrial space. So really passionate about that. I'm still on a number of advisory boards and doing specialist consulting in international development. So doing some work in Indonesia at the moment, in Pakistan, a little bit over in Mozambique, and I think that grounds me playing in that space as well, if that makes sense. And yeah, so probably continuing to. Someone said to me once, a mentor earlier in my career, they said, Dan, you need to think about your influence, the 3 I's: your influence, impact, and income. And I thought it was really interesting, because I resonated with the influence and impact piece.
Yeah.
But this coach, her point was, look, everyone needs income, and everyone has different expectations of what that looks like. They might be single, they might have a family, they might want to send all their kids to private schools and have nice cars and travel live a really expensive lifestyle, or they might want to live a really minimalistic lifestyle, or anything between. But but I think for me, I often look at opportunities when I'm thinking about saying yes, or in rare cases thinking about saying no. I look at it from that lens and go, is that something where I'm going to be really inspired about how I might be able to influence industry or influence people, and how will I have a positive impact, and uh, either how is there a way that that can generate income for me or generate income for others, when particularly in the international development space. But so I think for me, legacy in the Nile Water Project is a real ticks a lot of those boxes and keeps me excited. But I'm still dabbling and having a lot of fun trying to. I think as we get further in our career, we can have a positive influence and impact with strategic input into things, and so we can probably play in a range of spaces, which is a fun stage of our lives to be in.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, in being in some big projects, 2 years, 4 years, 7 years. I'm on a project now, probably that long, for completion, and
Yeah,
that runway, it feels like, 6 years. It's a long time, but it's really not, in a way. It's a little
yeah,
blip. Do you feel? And I mean, it's probably a little related, but are you winning? I just want to know: are you winning? You feel like you're winning, because you got to feel like you're winning. I think high five. You got to high five someone at some stage throughout the week.
yeah. I think that's I think we are winning at the moment, and it's been uh, it's been an amazing journey, learning and getting deeply involved in not just institutional investment, but high net worth investment, and how to engage in that space, state and federal government funding, First Nations, off to all the off takers, and understanding their drivers. And so there's lots of moving parts, and but definitely feel like we're winning at the moment, and definitely feel like I'm richer for the experience in terms of how much I've been growing.
Yeah, and that is it right there. That is winning.
Yeah,
That feeling richer for the moment. So now it's not. I really want to, and I try not to, but sometimes it's important to ask, because you wear a lot of hats, and a lot of
yeah,
people say to me, "Oh, you wear all these hats, or you juggling all these balls, you got fingers in too many pies, and all that stuff." Tell me about, very quickly, what's your time management like? How do you do all of those things? You sort of talk about all these developing nations. You got all this. Yeah, you got a business. You're trying to get all these high net worths. You're trying to do this thing, like, you got a family. How do you manage your time? And give me a couple of the little key tidbits, something that people would go, oh, I could maybe do that, or resonate with that, or there's so many things,
yeah.
and everyone talks about time management, and it's a big thing, time management, and you need more focus, you don't need more time. Sorry, I can rattle it on all day.
No, no,
Just give me a little something, because, you know, I think listeners will hear this and be like, oh my God, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. You're a superhuman, you're a cyborg. Seriously. How do you do all that? What are your little tricks and traps?
I think it's about learning what it it's about saying yes to things you're passionate about, because they energize you. And so uh, when you work at, and I'm still learning, but when you're in things that are draining you, learning to say no, and so you focus on the things that are giving you energy. I think within the different areas and different realms, knowing your strengths. So or what does Darren Flynn, or what does Joe Bloggs bring to a project or a team or an advisory board that is their unique gold? Because if you understand what that is and you can bring that, then with a limited amount of time and input, you can shift the environment in a room in a positive way, or shift the a project's direction or momentum, or so for me, I probably get energized by being with people and by bouncing ideas around. And there's probably there's lots of engineers out there that get more energized by being right down in the detail and crunching the numbers uh, and solving complex technical problems. And so for them, that might be their superpower and thing that they really enjoy. And as they develop through their career, they might be like a peer reviewer that with an hour or 3 hours of their time can help save millions of dollars on projects by sort of moving into that technical specialist role. So understanding what brings you life and what your unique skill set is means that you can be really targeted in terms of the value and know what you bring. And that's, so I don't know if that makes sense around time management, but being targeted around what you bring and the value you create. And so for me, that enables me to be involved in a lot of things, but I like to think that I add value with in a targeted way.
Yep. No, I mean, that's great because, you know, there is a lot of things that you want to see the joy in. You know, we see there's things like admin and all the rest of it. And you're right, because you find if you have a day of those things where you just from one thing to the next, but you're adding value, you're having a whiteboard session, you're having a meeting over here where you're spitballing ideas and you come up with something over there, and then you might punch out a few emails, but they're all good things. And you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh wow, oh my God, that was an amazing day. If you could have those every day, I would say you've truly nailed your career. That's
yes, and I think we're all looking at how do we get, like, I couldn't see you, Darren, getting lots of life out of typing the details of every receipt into an expense claim, for example. So, and is that your superpower, or? And some people actually
not really.
Some people love that. They love getting everything organized.
Oh, look, I do love a good Excel spreadsheet. I won't lie. It doesn't matter what it is. Even if it's just one that's off to the side that I'll do calcs in all the time, or crunch some numbers because my brain just says, no, I couldn't be bothered, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes that book one will be open for weeks.
I can resonate.
And it will never get saved, and it will always be closed without saving. And then I'll remember later, I'll be like, oh, damn it. I'll just do it again.
Yep, I know. There's nothing like a spreadsheet where you can crunch some numbers in your spare time.
Yep, that's right. So I feel like I've got to know you so well over the last hour or so. It's been amazing listening to your journey. As I can see it, from army to engineer, from chairs to CEO to your own, startup business, while also being an adjunct professor at a university and working in an advisory space in the developing world. I mean, wow, like, hats off to you. You are proof that you can do it and you can have an impact across all those things. So well done to you, Daniel Lambert. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I've enjoyed every minute, and I can't wait until it's your turn to interview me.
I look forward to it, Darren. I think it'll be an equally fun conversation, and it's been a wonderful exploring lots of great topics over the last hour, and look forward to your interview soon.
Awesome, mate. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. It's good fun.
Thanks so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed that podcast. Please like and subscribe. It helps us reach so many more aspiring engineering professionals and entrepreneurs. You can find us on LinkedIn, Spotify, and YouTube.